first is going to be Bradford Clark, who is talking about lies, damned lies, and puppets, designing Baron Munchausen. He's a professor at Bowling Green State University and is going to talk about his 2022 adaptation of that work. The production drew inspiration from Czech, Italian string puppetry, classic toy theater designs, and other sources. It's really great work. The other person is Stephen Witterman, who will speak second on puppetry in 3D video. So he believes 3D video is fit for puppetry. So for those of us who may not be as technologically knowledgeable as Stephen is, he will share his insights. He's the director of the Puppet Company and Heartstrings Media in Chicago, working at puppetry for education, advertising, film, TV. Video clips of his marionettes, the gum wrappers, were screened at the 3D Con in 2022, the annual convention of the National Stereoscopic Association. He leads a special interest group on puppetry in 3D for stereoscopic photographers and filmmakers. I said it right, I hope. The third speaker will be Elaine Williams, who will talk about some of her designs for the Center for Puppetry Arts. She's a scenographer. She's collaborated with John Ludwig, Bobby Box, the extraordinary team at the Center for Puppetry Arts on many shows, including Stella Luna, Beauty and the Beast, Plant Doctor, Space, Frankenstein, and Frank, and too many others to mention here. She's affiliated as an artist with Bloomberg Theater Ensemble and is designed for Stage One, the Louisville Children's Theater, Theater in the Square, Georgia Shakespeare Festival, Alliance Theater. She teaches design in the Department of Theater and Dance at Bucknell University and has an MFA from the University of Georgia. So we'll do questions again at the end and just put them in the chat as you see fit as we go along. So thank you so much. I should have said that I'm Kathy Foley. I'm the immediate past president, and I'm the one who said we should do a Zoom and we should invite some designers to talk about their works. So I'm going to hand it now over to Bradford Clark for lies, damn lies, and puppets. Brad.
Thank you, Kathy. It's always good to know who to blame. So hi, thank you everybody for being here. It's really quite an honor. As Kathy says, I think designers very often are kind of the quiet members of the team. And, you know, for many of us, we kind of prefer that. We're not the ones that stand in front of people and talk about the work that often, but it's always kind of fun and ego gratifying when we have that chance. I'm going to leap right into the PowerPoint. I did want to talk a little bit about Bowling Green State University. We're in Bowling Green, Ohio, and we don't actually have a puppet program. But I've been here for about 29 years, and on average, every 5-6 years or so, I've been able to get a project through that was very puppet oriented. So it's been kind of exciting, and I've had a very supportive group of colleagues, especially on the technical and design end. So it's been kind of fun. We've been able to do a few things. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share my screen. I think this will work. Okay, is that working? Or can you see this?
Yes.
Great, okay. So, lies, damn lies, and puppets, designing Baron Munchausen. Baron Munchausen is not that well known in the United States, but if you're a Terry Gilliam fan, you probably saw The Adventures of Baron Munchausen in the 1980s. I actually became kind of obsessed with him when I was a teenager. Later, when the film came out, I saw it and went, well, he's done everything he can possibly do with it. Why would I bother? And so it only took a few more decades to get around to doing it. And it largely happened because, oops, sorry, let me see if I can. There we go. It largely happened because I was looking at acquiring some new skills. I've studied carving off and on over the years, but when I'm not actually working on a project, I tend not to do much carving. And so it started off with really a series of puppet heads that were based on pictures from Czech museums. And I didn't even have a script at the beginning. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I did want to show you a few images of things that we've done in the past at Bowling Green. This was a Tempest production, which originally started in collaboration with mask maker Ida Bagus Anom and musician Raka Chameng in Bali. And so this was actually the third version, the first one being at Shakespeare Santa Cruz many years ago. A couple more images from it. And even the set down here was based on a shadow puppet that we were able to kind of blow up to large scale. So it gave us a chance to play with some different materials and some different techniques. Pictures and Exhibition was a rod puppet production based on the Mussorgsky music piece. Basically, we created scenarios for each of the pieces of music and then presented them. So there was no dialogue anywhere within the production. This was Monkey Storm's Heaven, which was based on stories from The Journey to the West, the Chinese epic. By this point, I was beginning to carve a little bit. Monkey's head was carved. We also were working with some motifs, not really based on Chinese puppetry at all, but definitely influenced by it. And then about 6 years ago, I did an adaptation of Frankenstein. By this point, I had gone back to Ida City in Japan, in the village of Tatsue, and I was working with a group called Imada Ningyo and studied with performance with them, but also head carving with Toshisuke Makimoto, who passed away last year. And I was able to go back a couple summers and continue my studies with him. So it was the first time I really committed to doing some serious carving in order to produce these puppets. And that just kind of whetted my appetite to do yet another project, which eventually turned into Baron Mulhausen, his travels, triumphs, and tribulations. Mulhausen, of course, has been around forever. The book was written, I believe, towards the end of the 18th century. There have been many, many different versions of the book, actually different tellings of the same stories. So R.E. Rasp is given credit for doing the original book, and then others came in and added to it, and there's some question in terms of identity. But as a result, there's a real wonderful richness of illustration that has accumulated over the years. Along with this, I just sort of decided to throw in everything that I thought would be fun, everything that I love. So toy theater sheets, the designs of Georges Méliès in the upper right-hand corner there. Down in the left-hand corner is the cover of a game. And down in the lower right-hand corner is actually a design, I believe, from a Masonic auditorium, from Masonic rituals, that we actually have designs from companies that would mass produce scenery all over the country for this. And I just love that kind of 19th century painterly aesthetic. And as Mulhausen began to take shape, I realized that I really wanted to try and learn how to pay homage to that kind of 19th century Czech, Slovak aesthetic, the traveling puppet theaters. And it's kind of ironic to be doing a talk like this in this particular session, because I'm kind of the opposite of innovative. It's more that I really would like to go back and pick up some skills, very traditional skills, and see what I can do with them. Part of what I want to talk about today is the process behind it, because I think as a theater person, I tend to forget that a lot of people come to puppetry from non-theater backgrounds. And so maybe it's helpful to kind of look how, people who have more of theater training actually approach it. So in this case, I started, before I even really had a completed script, with some storyboards, which then led to a small model, which was really not even in scale. It was really just there so that the technical director, Danny Mangan, and I could work our way through the scenes and not get totally confused. So that's what's going on in the lower left-hand corner. And the storyboards then became these little painted representations of the sliding panels that we were going to use for the final design. I then took those and blew them up on a series of panels that Danny and the shop staff created for me. Each of them was in 2 parts, and then we had little side wings that came in as well. Down in the bottom was actually a battlefield, and it was about 40 feet long with the panels continuously moving as action took place in front. Unfortunately, we were actually in the middle of our run when Putin decided to invade the Ukraine. And the big, fun, happy battle in Mulhausen is actually a battle between the Russian forces of Catherine the Great and an unnamed neighbor. So we meant absolutely no disrespect this horrible, horrible situation. It's just one of those terrible things that sometimes happens with timing. So the upper right-hand corner is actually a Katharinaburg, and based on some photographs I was able to find from that. Then finally, we actually end up in the theater. So this was our theater in our smaller space. I painted the curtain. My colleague, who is a professional scenic artist, Kelly Mangan, and her assistant did the overall outside proscenium. And then we get to some of the scenes, lighting by Steve Boone, as it says there. You can kind of see the break in the middle here, which was kind of obvious throughout the show, but it seemed to tie in with the aesthetic. And that's Mulhausen, and the framing device for the entire script had to do with Mulhausen telling these stories to a captive audience in an inn. I was really helped on this script, both by my colleague, Margaret McCubbin, but also John Ludwig. I had a teacher named John Helwig. John Ludwig at the Center for Puppetry Arts, who did an online workshop in screenwriting, and he was script writing, and he was very kind and looked over the earlier versions of this. So a couple more scenes. Our underwater scene there with the giant fish who appears, and you can't really see it, it's not painted yet, but that's Mulhausen riding a seahorse. And then below we're in Siberia. And I included this, it's very hard to see, but one of the things I wanted to play around with was automata, because I've never done that before. And so I created this box on wheels with little gears. So as Mulhausen, which is the figure in red there, is pulled across the stage, these wolves are leaping and jumping at him while we're howling off stage. So sometimes worked, sometimes didn't, never quite got the friction right, but it was kind of fun. We end up in Hades, a bit of a spoiler alert. And one of the very first puppets I did was actually this little guy in the corner who was, before we even had, before I'd even decided to do Mulhausen, he's based on a Czech voda man, an underwater man. So we decided to place him in Hades instead of the water because I couldn't really figure out, there was so much going on underwater already. I didn't want to waste him. And then this is Venus, who comes and rescues Mulhausen at the very end of the show. Yep. Let's see. There we go. So, and then finally, to look at the puppets themselves, this is some of the research that I found on Czech and Slovak puppets. What would happen was that heads would be carved for companies that mass produced puppets and then sold them to the public, and especially people who had home theaters. And so what they would do is carve a prototype head and then sketch it, and that's what would go in the catalog. And so we actually have some of these images. And I found a couple of them online in an article and began using them as a basis for practicing my own carving, again, before I even knew what I wanted to do with it. And eventually I found that I was accumulating a lot of these puppets, and I needed to figure out how to actually use them. And that's when Mulhausen came to mind. So once I actually had a sense of what this was going to be, I began doing costume sketches for them. Now, I was very, very fortunate. I was able to work with one of our graduate students and adjunct professors, Liz Lee, who is amazingly talented. I can do pretty pictures, but I know absolutely nothing when it comes to costume construction. And Liz was able to take those sketches, and the two of us would sit down and bang our heads together and figure it out. And she would create the actual patterns. She would sew them in conjunction with Laurel Damon, our genius head of the costume shop, and the students who work in the shop. And as a result, you know, things that I could have never done with needle and thread, she was able to do.
Brad, we have about a minute or
Yes.
so.
And I will make it, I think,
Thank
if I
you.
can get this clicking. There we go. There we go. Couple more. That's Venus on the left. That's our Denizen of Hades on the right. Now, this is another example of automata. Our little Cyclops on the corner there actually would go back and forth. We actually had to have people kind of hidden in the side. We had a galloping horse at one point. And probably the most popular and beloved puppets of the whole show are actually two jellyfish created by Laurel Damon, who created one. And I looked at it and said, if you give me two, I have a scene. And she hemmed and hawed, and she proceeded to do it instantly. And it basically stole the show. And there we have At Curtain Call. And I made it. Thank you very much. Now I would like to turn this over to Steve Witterman.
Hi, I'm Steve Witterman. Happy to see everybody here. Am I unmuted? Yes. And I'm here to talk about puppetry in 3D video and film. This is a kind of a new kind of thing I'm very excited about. It's really wonderful news for puppetry and our community. But just a little disclaimer before I start. I'd just like to point out that this is not 3D printing. A lot of people get this confused and they hear the 3D, and there is a new technology where you can print things out in 3D with a 3D printer, and this is not that. But this is filming puppetry using 3D equipment. So I'm going to be discussing that in detail. So these are the topics I'll be covering. Just very quickly, puppetry provides a unique source for creating 3D imagery for film and television and virtual reality. And this is transformative to our art form. Very excited about that aspect of it. Then I'm going to talk about PuppetVid 3D, which literally provides an added dimension for communicating with the audience. And I will be defining that term. 3D images can be streamed live or pre-recorded, and that's pretty cool. We can do this live in real time, and I'll be discussing the details of that. And this is unique to puppetry. No one else can do this. The way puppetry is produced for film and video offers us a unique way of performing and showing our talent to the audience. This is also the logical next step in the work that has come before it, which we'll examine that a little bit. Also, the technology is changing. Advanced video displays will create a special niche for our art in the future and well into the future in the digital world. Also, it provides a wonderful opportunity for puppet collections and exhibits, which will allow online viewing and actually walking through exhibits and seeing them in 3D, as close as you can get to being there without actually having to travel. And then finally, I think this is most important, the things that you can do to support this concept. A lot of these things, you know, you hear about it and you go, well, you know, I'm not making puppetry film, or I'm not doing that right now and it doesn't affect me. But in spite of all that, there's a lot you can do. So I'll be pointing those out. So the first thing I want to talk about is how this is complicated. I realize that a lot of people are technically challenged, and stereoscopy really is referring to seeing with two eyes. And we're actually making a movie for each eye. So it's really two movies, not one movie. And the equipment is expensive. Editing is a lot harder. Everything takes up twice as much space. There's a lot of technical issues. And that part, I think we can avoid for puppeteers and what you need to know to do this and be a part of this world. Observing the 3D images does require the viewer or the audience to have special display equipment or to wear glasses. Many of you have been to 3D movies and you wear glasses. IMAX has 3D, or used to. They're no longer screening things in 3D. I think that will come back. Most people think of puppetry as a form of object manipulation, and the concept of capturing that in 3D seems to be logical and pretty self-evident to most people. And in practice, that's true. But the advantage actually when you do this runs a lot deeper than what appears superficially obvious. And finally, PuppetVid 3D defines the techniques for mastering this very special connection between the art and the technology. So I would like to talk about PuppetVid 3D for a second here. It literally adds a new dimension to what the audience is seeing. And so PuppetVid 3D is my own name for this, and I have trademarked that, and I am defining it. So this is my own definition for a term that I made up. So I just want that to be clear to everyone that I have invented this name so we can discuss it, talk about it, and promote it. So what PuppetVid 3D is, it's shot with stereoscopic lenses. And while the puppeteer is moving real objects in real light, in real time, while the puppet performer observes that image on a 3D monitor. So there's actually a lot more to it than that, but this is the essence of it, and I'll repeat that. It's shot with two lenses while moving real objects in real light, in real time, while the puppet performer observes the image on a 3D monitor. The images that are created are observable both live streaming and pre-recorded, and I'll discuss that more. This opens a portal into a new niche of puppetry performance and viewing. This is performance that is conceived in 3D, performed in 3D, and is meant to be viewed in 3D. It's very specific. If you don't want to watch it in 3D, everything is viewable in 2D. So if you don't like 2D, you're free to watch in 2D. You'll definitely be missing the aspect that was created specifically for it to be viewed in 3D if you do that. This also assures that the ancient art of puppetry has a unique position in the world of digital access. It distinguishes itself from computer-generated images. And for a while we thought CGI might replace puppets in film, and this defies that notion. We definitely have a wonderful future in the digital world. Now, as I mentioned, 3D images can be streamed live or pre-recorded. It is technically possible to stream 3D images over Zoom, and I can do this now. I can do this with an anaglyph. Some of you may be familiar with anaglyph, where you have red and cyan or blue glasses, one lens for each eye. And this works with any color display, and you will be able to see the 3D. So we could do that. I could ask that you all have glasses, and you can see in my picture, Professor Cogitate is holding up the glasses. And you should always keep a pair of those glasses by your computer. This will work. And this opens up a whole new playground to the puppet artists. This is a world that we get to play in now that expands the universe that we had before with video. So this is unique to puppetry. The way puppetry, the standard form of making puppet film and video, is to watch a monitor. No other performer observes the image they're creating the way video puppeteers do it. Puppeteers learn how to adapt to this format intuitively. Now, I've presented PuppetVid 3D at several festivals and presented workshops. And what I found is that puppeteers who are already well-versed in video technology and working with a monitor, they figure this out pretty quickly. And with a little bit of training and a little bit of information, they start getting good at it. But what we need is a community of puppeteers that are good at this. And that's one thing I'm working on. One of the things video puppeteers are good at is that they observe the edge of frame. So they watch the edge where their puppet enters and exits. One of the things they practice when they're learning to do video puppetry is to enter the edge of screen, walk to the center of the screen, and face the audience and have their eyes look into the camera. This is the same for 3D, but what 3D does is adds the stereo window to this equation, allowing the artist to integrate the perception of death and the use of popping out of the screen into their dramatic performance. So it becomes less of a gimmick that way. And if you think of the old puppet Punch and Judy puppet booth as a metaphor for this, then we can have it work that the puppet, if you think of Mr. Punch appearing in the window, can now lean over the playboard into the audience. And the puppeteer can see that happening and have that big punch nose almost touch the nose of the audience. And that works for everyone in the audience. It's not just one person. Now, a skilled puppet performer will create aesthetically pleasing 3D imagery for the audience. And I use an old computer term, WYSIWYG here. It means what you see is what you get. And because you're looking at a monitor when you create the 3D, you are seeing exactly what your audience will see in 3D. And so that's a unique thing. This is the logical next step from the work that has come before it. It merges the worlds of ancient art of puppetry and stereoscopy, this new technology we have. The use of monitors is typically used for filming puppetry. And for a while, Blu-ray 3D discs were available to view 3D content if you had a 3D TV or home projector. Now, 3D TVs were discontinued being manufactured in 2016, but you can still get a projector, and it's a great way to watch 3D content. I also would like to mention that we have our own rock star, Sir Brian May of Queen, the rock band Queen. He's a 3D proponent, and there is a 3D disc out available called The Mask. It's a 1961 film, and on that disc, there's a bonus that has the Diablerie Stereoscopic Adventures in Hell, which is a bunch of old 3D cards of stop motion puppets that Brian May has reproduced as a film on that disc, The Mask. And so we have a very old stop motion movie made in, I think, the 1920s or so. I should check that out. I don't know the exact date, but it's a remarkable stop action film. Now, this is not Puppet 3D because it's stop action. And if you notice, my definition of Puppet Vid 3D is that it's real time. So if you know the films of Leica, those films are all stop action films that are produced in 3D with real light, but not in real time. And so I don't consider that Puppet Vid 3D by my own definition. However, those are great examples of seeing puppet films in 3D, and I highly recommend them. Those are Coraline, Paranorman, Kubo and the Two Strings. So those are those movies. Also, some directors that are really notable for their work in 3D, James Cameron, Martin Scorsese, Sam Raimi. James Cameron is known for the Avatar series, and we have high hopes for a new movie coming out in December, maybe with some new technology, and so we're looking forward to that. Also, you should know that there's a difference between real and fake 3D. A lot of the movies that you go see in movie theaters have been remastered from 2D into 3D. And that's really unfortunate if you know how 3D works, that there's a lot of mistakes in those movies. And that's what often gives you a headache, is that is just not shot to be seen in 3D. And so it's good to know. And there is a website, real versus fake 3D, if you want to know which are which. I highly recommend the ones that are made in 3D. Now, not all fake 3D movies are bad. There is a remaster of The Wizard of Oz that is just simply outstanding. And I also think that Jaws is coming into theaters again, which I hear is a really good reissue in 3D. Probably well done, but
Ethan?
those are our, yes.
You have about a minute.
Yep.
or so.
Okay, and I'm going to make it.
Great, great.
Okay, so new displays are being developed, and one of the things that we're hoping for is the glasses are going away, and that is called auto-stereoscopic. And I've been playing with some of that technology. I have it, some of it, the tablets are really fabulous. I have some large screen TVs. It's not so good, but it's getting better, and new things are coming along all the time. But I'm looking forward to the day when every screen in every restaurant and bar is auto-stereoscopic, and you will see the 3D, whether you have glasses or want to see it that way or not. Also, virtual reality or VR headsets are automatically in 3D because they are showing you a different movie in each eye. And that is another way to see that in 3D. Another thing that's very exciting is puppet collections and exhibits. And an important application is the preservation and sharing of collections online. And this may allow you to view a puppet from any angle or walk through an exhibit. And that's a very exciting aspect of it. And again, we're just getting started doing this type of work. So that's very exciting. Not really Puppet Vid 3D, but still filming puppets in 3D. And finally, I just want to mention what you can do. It's really important that you try to do what you can at whatever level you're at and interested in with this. But one thing is to be aware of this special connection between the technology and our art. And don't badmouth 3D. Try to support the format. I'd like you to follow and like my PuppetVid 3D page on Facebook. Support that format by attending 3D showings in theatrical release. Go to the movies. Get a pair of anaglyph glasses. Those are the red and the blue or cyan glasses. They will allow you to see 3D images on your monitor that you have now. They're cheap. They cost $1 or less. Get a Viewmaster of photos from Bob Baker Marionette Theater. They sell a Viewmaster with pictures of the puppets, and they're available online. Get a Google Cardboard. That's a viewer that you put your phone in, and it will allow you to see 3D images on your phone. Go to Disney World and see Muppet Vision 3D. That's one of the last things that Jim Henson worked on in his lifetime. It's a masterpiece of 3D work, and it's really a shame they did not have the technology we have now, because it makes it a lot easier to make that content. You can look for 3D content on services such as YouTube, Vudu, and Roku. And you can like my PuppetVid 3D page on Facebook. I think I said that already. I also have a web page, thegumwrappers.us, with links to my video film work. And also talk to me if you're interested. Here's my email. I'm happy to talk to anyone that's interested. And hopefully there are people that would like to get really skilled at working in 3D with their monitors. So thank you very much. And I'd now like to introduce Elaine Williams.
Hello, folks. Hi, it's been my great pleasure and joy to design sets and puppets for the Center for Puppetry Arts. Two writers and directors, John Ludwig and Bobby Box, and lighting designer and producer Liz Lee, have expanded my imagination as a visual storyteller. I've learned to exploit every object on stage. Everything is a puppet. Everything is a puppet. Today, I'm going to briefly show you 3 productions in very different styles. And they're important to me because they have shaped how I approach designing for all performing arts, not just puppetry. So we're going to look at Beauty and the Beast, and Frank Within and Without, and the plant doctors. And we're going to begin with a short video promo of Beauty and the Beast.
On the edge of life. That's right. I feel like I'm on the edge. I reach out and can almost touch it. It knows who I am. It's a smile on a face I've not yet seen. And I tremble, tremble, tremble at the possibilities that a voice whispers, a voice I don't know, but have heard for a long, long time.
Oops. Thank you. The set is an urban junk heap. And on the stage right side of the stage is a factory with multiple levels, including a freight elevator. We see Bobby Box in the original production sweeping the dock of the warehouse. As we move across stage, we're moving across an urban landscape that will include the beauty shop of Beauty's mama, who is a hairdresser, and we cross town to the Rose Garden of the Beast. The stage right, as I mentioned, is the rod puppet area, and the predominant action is in check black. The objects are found objects. Beauty is assembled on stage out of the junk heap from stylized mop, pretty fabulous ponytail with a pink bow, a parasol skirt, a pink beauty smock. In this image, you see that the chair, the beauty shop, has popped up out of a sonotube. Here in the Beast world, the tree is going to be fully animated as literally a place for the Beast to sing and dance and discover beauty in our area. Here we see several objects that are going to become animated. In particular, we see the fire screen warming mama here. Here's the beauty. Here's Beauty at table with dancing armchair, concertina, violin, napkin, tree, and the Beast looking down. Notice that the Beast is also a mop head, industrial mop with horns that are cast from deer horns that I found on my farm. He has a very rough shirt that we'll also see kind of flying on a clothesline in the junk heap. And here is Beauty beautied up here with her mop head stylized, a little rhinestone tiara, and a lace parasol for a new skirt and a very fancy top. And Frank Within and Without, which was written and directed by Bobby Box, has the conceit of playing within a child's playroom. The featured object in the piece is a doll's house, and the doll's house is the secret annex. Both Bobby and I, on independent occasions, had the opportunity to go to Amsterdam and actually walk the secret annex And without question, that experience deeply informed our attitude towards this work and our knowledge with immediate firsthand research. On the right, on the left-hand side of your screen, you see the scenic model for the doll's house, actually constructed in a scale of 1/4 inch equals to 2 inches. And we actually built not only from drawings, but from the model of the dollhouse. Here on the opposite side of the screen, you see the dollhouse set within the downstairs theater. The surround is antique lace, and there are a few minimal objects that are in the space because our two puppeteers also will perform roles of Margot and Anne and other characters within the piece. Sarah, can you advance? I've got it. I've got it. So the one of the major features of the front of the annex is that part of it drops, and we're able to make a Punch and Judy puppet theater, which is used to embody the violence inherent that's within the piece. Here we see rooms within the doll's house. These puppets were designed by Jason Hines. Other scenes from Anne Frank Within Without, you see the way in which the curtain surround can be used not only for cast shadow puppetry, but also projecting photographs relevant to the storytelling. It's a place of memory, a place of dream, and a place of stark reality. Here's an example of the way in which toys, objects within this play space take on an ominous presence as the puppets are taken from the secret annex and placed into a train cattle car. And for fun, here's Plant Doctors. This piece was just joyous because we're working with scale. Green Onion is the central character in the piece. She's about 3 feet tall, and everything on the set, including all the other puppets, are scaled to Green Onion. Here we see another principal character, Dr. Wise Old Tree, who has the full stage right prominence in the set, and as you can see here, moves freely as a body puppet. And here you also see the scale of Green Onion to the tree and to her villains, Deadly Nightshade and his cronies. I'm including some of the original drawings of the puppets because we built from them. And I also just want to point out how extraordinary it is to work with the center, because there's such really fine craftspeople with whom I had the pleasure to work with. I was completely in residency for this piece and also helped to build most of these pieces. Here you see how the roots become a playboard for characters coming in and out. Some more puppets here, Flower and Spud. These puppets are within the playboard of the stage left area of the set. They sing, they move, they're specially placed and animated from within the set. Fern, strawberry, cactus. This piece features the famous song Fungus Among Us. And we also have a drawing here for a giant mushroom, which is a body puppet, which also enters behind the playboard. There are different areas of the set, including this observatory section, and you can see the way in which cast shadow and actual shadow becomes part of our storytelling. And finally, I just want to do a real shout out to the excellent puppeteers that are in each company of the plays that I've had an opportunity to design. And one of the things that I just really appreciate as a designer of within an ephemeral form is that, unlike anywhere else I've worked, I've had the opportunity to come back and actually see work that I've designed and see it freshly restaged with new sets of puppeteers and made lively and accessible to audiences by our directors, and most especially John Ludwig. So I just like to thank everyone at the center for the opportunities to work, and invite everyone to see some of this work, which is still in repertory. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. I now want to call all of the presenters back on screen. So Brad and Stephen, hopefully you'll appear. I also want to thank the Center for Puppetry Arts, and especially Sarah Bermenko, who is doing everything on the backside of this to make it happen. For UNIMA-USA and for all this wonderful technology and the wonderful shows that we get there. It is the Center for Puppetry Arts, which allows UNIMA-USA to go forward, and we owe them so much. And they're such great people, as Elaine pointed out. Okay, I've been sort of monitoring the chat, and most of it is clapping and other things like that, rather than the hardcore questions. But certainly for Brad, we've had love the fish. Someone said that the Paige McRae said that we should see the Terry Gilliam film. Someone else said, Alexander Winfield said that the Karl Zerman film from Czechoslovakia, we should see.
Which was a big influence on Terry Gilliam too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the DNA is throughout.
So I wonder, Brad, did those films have an impact on you? How did you choose this project?
Well, fortunately I'd come across the book before I'd seen any of the films, and I actually was very conscious to not watch the Gilliam again. I had actually at one point, because I loved the script so much, I'd even contacted his agents to see if it was possible to adapt some of the dialogue, and they said, well, we don't own it. And then suddenly it was dealing with Sony or Columbia, and I kind of thought, yeah, I don't want to go there. So I did my best for legal reasons to avoid it as much as possible. But there are certain scenes that are in the book that are just kind of universally adapted. I mean, there are silent cartoon versions of this. There's a Russian cartoon. There have been multiple Russian films. So I think it's, if you were to watch the film and watch the our production of it, there's definitely some parallels there, but I was trying very hard not to draw from the film, but draw from the source material. But, I am a huge fan of the Gilliam, no question.
Okay, and I think Brad did put in the chat how to see this thing, and I really want to encourage you. I thought it was a wonderful use of toy theater, and I felt like I was having a design history of the 19th century. But
it does have an unintentionally insensitive, lighthearted battle of the Russian army, so I do apologize, but be warned.
Okay, this is for any of the speakers. It says, how should I start creating theater for puppets in an area where the art isn't not prominent? So We're not at the Center for Puppetry Arts, nor are we in Bowling Green, where the designer has something, or in Chicago, where Steve Witterman is. How do you begin on this journey? How did you begin on this journey? Brad.
I would say the beauty of puppetry is that it can work on any scale. We saw during the pandemic how many people were doing productions from home. I think you start small, try and gather people to you and see what happens. I was lucky in that my first real production was actually through UC Santa Cruz with the Gilgamesh, and then later was able to do work through Shakespeare Santa Cruz and Hartnell College. But in the end, I was just I wanted to do it. And so I found ways to do it. And there have been times where the money's come out of pocket, but you can do toy theater with cardboard boxes and do really wonderful, rich things, the kinds of things that John Bell and Great Theater Works are doing. I think you just do it. And then hopefully you gather enough people that you can get support to do something a little bigger scale. Making a living at it is a whole other question, though.
Okay, Elaine or Stephen? You have Stephen, please. You're muted, Stephen.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that there's always the library, and take out all the books you can on puppetry. Read, buy books, get books. There's a lot of information online these days. And also our organizations like UNIMA-USA. There's also Puppeteers of America, which has local guilds all over the country. Hopefully there's an active group in your area, so definitely check in. I've been a member of those organizations, I don't want to say how long, decades. And I was a child when I first joined. I was a junior member, and I met everyone in puppetry, and there's no better way to learn than from the people who are doing it. I was very lucky. I got to study with Bill Baird's marionettes and work with Bill Baird, and that's the essence of my training.
Of Facebook too, there are all kinds of organizations there, and people are just, the neat thing about puppetry is people are really supportive of each other. At least that's been my experience. They're just excited that you care, and so once you kind of find your people, they're really open to sharing information and ideas and places to go.
And I was just going to add for venues, speaking of libraries, our librarians are our friends. I mean, they will be so excited to present, and that would be both for, children's and adult audiences and community centers, and really encourage you in your effort to bring puppetry wherever you are.
Okay. Elaine, this is from Lori. It says, how is the thought process different when designing sets for puppets versus traditional theater?
I love this question, and I'm going to answer it this way, is that I've been able to take what I've learned in designing for puppetry, which is that there is nothing on stage that isn't used in some way that doesn't have some meaning and and more than metaphor, more than likely, it's actually physically moved. So if you take that idea into staging any kind of theatrical performance, it's going to be so much stronger, because it's going to keep the visual focus completely clear and aligned with actors' dialogue, in the same way that our work for Design for Puppets does that for actors that we have created.
I have a question for Stephen Witterman. You tell us that this is sort of the next step from TV monitors into the stereoscopic realm. What about those of us who, do live theater and toy theater and little matchbox theater?
I love your question, Kathy. I didn't plant this. I promise you, I can't believe you came up with it. But it is ideal. This is so wonderful. If you get your puppet show shot in 3D, people can see it in a way that they couldn't possibly see it any better than by being there. And so it adds that new dimension. And look, we're working with a sculptural moving art form. We're moving objects, physical objects in space. And that is conveyed so beautifully with 3D technology. It's a perfect thing. If you can get your show shot in 3D, if you have a live show, go for it. I'd say it's a wonderful way. Again, it can always be shown in 2D. Everything's backwards compatible, but 3D does add something really special when we're dealing with these objects that we move.
Yeah.
I see there's a question from Carol Sterling.
Please take it.
Oh, she was asking about if we were training puppeteers. And that's a good question as well. That's something I'm looking into, and I would really like to train people. I will be doing workshops at Potlatch and at the Puppeteers of America Festival next year, 2023. Those are with marionettes, and I'm developing what I'm called a unified theory with a puppet that starts as flat and becomes a 3D object. And then we'll film that in 3D and train marionette people to do Puppet Vid 3D. So not just for hand puppets, but for marionettes as well.
Yeah, we have a number, I think some librarians are online. Nancy Staub mentioned that for beginning, starting at libraries and things like that, it is a place that many of us have done shows, schools, kindergartens. I found that children's theater was often the most challenging, and the visuality of puppetry really opened doors. So it's really wonderful that all of you have been here, and it's the objects and the visual and then the moving of it and transforming in Stephen's thing into film really makes things alive. Someone mentions Waldorf schools use puppetry. So if you have a Waldorf school, that again, I've done many presentations there, might be a good place to go. So all of our people on the chat are also answering the questions, which supports what you guys are saying about the puppetry community. It's a small world, although it can be giant puppets as well. And that ability to change dimension, to go from the very simple to the complex, and sometimes work out things in the easy. Is there any last thing that each of you might want to say, or a question you want to ask to each other? Anyone? Brad? Stephen?
Well, I think just sort of chiming on to this idea of community, I think those of us who've traveled and have been to festivals or even just gone somewhere and tapped on the door of a local puppet theater can attest to the fact that wherever you are in the world, you have family, you have community. I think obviously the situation in the Ukraine is very much on our minds. And I always remember being in this little city in Russia where I tapped on the door of the local puppet theater with my 3 words of Russian, and within minutes, I was on the top floor being fed borscht because I was interested in puppets. I knew enough words to get that out. And I think, Nancy Staub has told me stories about traveling to UNIMA festivals and, these relationships that form that last for so long between people, very often coming from countries that have horrible political relationships. So to me, it's the most inspirational thing about this whole world that we're in.
Anyone else?
I'd just like to say, get yourself a pair of these glasses. It's hard to see, but red and cyan. The picture behind me is in 3D. You can see them in 3D if you have these on. So everyone should have a pair. That's a good place to get started.
Elaine?
Oh, well, I'm just very excited, particularly to follow up on some of Stephen's work too. And I appreciate that those links are available to us. It's exciting.
Yeah, I want to call Karen Smith, who is the current president of UNIMA-USA, on the screen. Hopefully she'll turn on her camera. It's already on, and her thing with a few words.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. I mean, this has been brilliant. And as you've seen in the chats, everybody who's been here wants more of the same, more presentations. And Kathy, you have started the ball rolling, and please continue. Sarah, back there, you have done a fabulous job in making all this technically possible. And Elaine, Brad, Stephen, you are incredible. I wish I wasn't stuck here in cold Australia. I wish I was there in your theatres and back in the USA. Anyway, I don't want to waste any more time. I just want to reiterate our call to all of you who knows people who love puppetry or who you think will like puppetry, and do encourage them to get into this crazy world. Please consider joining UNIMA-USA for those of you who are already members, renew your membership. But keep in mind that until 4th of September, there's a 10% off deal for new time members of UNIMA-USA. So if you know somebody or you wish to get the ball rolling, give them a membership. You'll get 10% off, and the membership will continue until December 31st, 2023. And I just want to also reiterate what Brad said towards the end of his, in the question and answer session. The friendships that we make through Puppeteers of America, through our guilds, and through UNIMA-USA, and especially being able to access the international world of puppetry, there's nothing like it. I mean, when I look at people like Kathy Foley, Nancy Staub, Carol Sterling, Vince Anthony, I mean, these are just to name a few people who are my extended family. Brad, I got to know you when you came and stayed with us in New Delhi, thanks to Nancy telling you about Dave and I. Anyway, please, we're trying to, Vince's goal is for us to reach 500 members in UNIMA-USA. We're up to about 470. So if we could get 30 more members between now and the end of the year, that would be wonderful. And it would be a 30-year anniversary gift to Vince and to, of course, to our organization, UNIMA-USA, if we reach the 500 membership mark. So please get more members if you need to join UNIMA-USA. And this is an amazing, wonderful family. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And we dissolve this meeting. Come to our next Zoom and let us know what you want.